No one cares about your passion until you have a plan. I'll say that again. No one cares about your passion until you have a plan. Now, I bring this up. I had a conversation last week, and this is part 2 of our series of getting into player development. And the person on the phone was like, well, where do I start? Like, how do I do this? I'm passionate about players. I'm passionate about the transition. I'm passionate about athletes and my playing career, what I did after that. And I'm just really, really passionate. And this is the commonality of a lot of calls I get. There's this individual who is super passionate about helping athletes, which is incredible, which is great. But you have to have a plan, or no coach, no administrator, no executive is going to listen to you. Hello, hello, hello. My name is Ed Jones, and I am the host of this podcast, the Player Development Pod. This podcast was created to bring exposure to the player development field. Thank you so much for being here. This is part 2, as I said earlier, of our 5-part podcast series on getting into player development. This was kind of sparked from a conversation I had, one of the 500 conversations on the phone or in person or even messaging that I've had about player development. And so what I wanted to do is kind of bring all these messages here. And today we are talking about having a plan as you transition to player development. So let's say you're on the phone once again with someone and someone has a position, or you go to our conference, you get a chance to network. Shout out to the Player Development Conference, May 19th, May 20th. The link is in the show notes, all virtual. You can do it wherever you need to be. But you have this opportunity and you're passionate and you get to present to a coach or your former coach. A lot of people get a chance. I tell them, go back. If you're an athlete, go back to the people who recruited you. Maybe it's not your head coach, but the assistant coach who recruited you. And you have all this passion. They know you're passionate, but you have to have a plan. So your question is, where do I start with this plan? What I always tell people is start with what you're most passionate about. So if you're passionate about financial education, just start there. Hey, this is a financial education plan. Here's budgeting. Here's finance. Here's other things, right? In financial education. But that's a plan. You're starting with that. You talk about how you can help athletes in financial education. If it's community impact or community engagement, start there. Hey, here are some organizations we could connect with, Here's some places we can make impact in the city, in the state, different organizations that are doing things around the world. Start there. If it's mentorship, start with mentorship. Create a mentorship plan for your student athletes. Just start with something. What I also tell people is when you were an athlete, what do you think was missing? Whatever you think was missing, create a plan for what was missing that would have made and enhanced your experience as a student athlete and taking it to the next level. So that's that. You have to have a plan because the passion's awesome. Trust me, the passion is awesome. And there's a lot of people who care about player development. And this is even on the side of, I've worked with people like, for lack of a better word, vendors or people who are outside the program who want to work with our student athletes or want to speak in front of our student athletes, whatever it may be. And I'm like, okay, so what do we have? Well, I'm passionate. I want to help student athletes. And then I'm like, all right, awesome. What do we have? What are we going to do? What's the takeaway from this? So if you're listening to this and you're really passionate about helping student athletes and you're like, man, I want to transition here. I want to transition this place. Do that. A lot of you all that listen are transitioning from academics to player development. You already have an academic background. Your plan could be an academic background or academic plan that engages other aspects of their life. But whatever it is, once again, no one cares about your passion unless you have a plan. Once again, no one cares about your passion until you have a plan. Now, one thing you can plan to do is come to the Player Development Conference, which is on May 19th and May 20th. It's virtual. The link is in the show notes. Shout out to our gold sponsor, ATS, Athlete Transition Services, who is there, who will be there, who will be in attendance, who will be, it's going to be incredible what they do for athletes as they transition. They had a plan. Jonathan Orr, who's a founder, had a plan. He saw some things that happened when he was an athlete. He came up with a plan. So we're excited to have him there. And shout out to Athlete Transition Services. Now, once again, this is part 2. Part 1 video is up here. You can find some other videos I have about beginning in player development, things to do in player development. Check those out. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe.